Hi, everybody. For the first time in the history of this podcast or this video series, I feel compelled to offer a disclaimer for the episode. The beer that I brewed and that Steve and I tasted was pretty darn good in this episode, and it was soured, kettle soured, using the SCOBY from a batch of kombucha. Well, everything was going well until we went away for a camping for a weekend after we shot this episode, and my family and I returned to a broken bottle in and amongst the homebrew. And I hardly ever have bottle bombs. It's extremely rare. It's been years since I've had one. So I thought, well, what went on with this SCOBY batch? Should I have boiled instead of bringing it up just to pasteurization temperature before pitching the yeast? Was there something involved with the fermenter that I used for dry hopping when I transferred into secondary fermentation? Was it just a rare, unsanitized bottle? Did it have something to do with the dog? No, it didn't have anything to do with the dog, I don't think. But so what I did was I said, well, I'm going to brew another batch of this kettle soured SCOBY beer, and see if boiling, could avoid problems in the bottle. Well, as you'll see from this picture, the second attempt at the SCOBY soured beer resulted in a vigorous fermentation almost immediately, and over the course of a few days, about 4 days, the pH only came down to 4.2. So I didn't get the souring that I got before, and the fermentation looked and smelled kind of weird, so I threw it away. So I'm still investigating the potential bottle bomb issue. So the disclaimer to this episode is your mileage may vary. So if there was one piece of advice that I'd give you, if you're going to try to brew this beer, is if you do get it to successfully sour in the kettle, I would, instead of just taking it up to a pasteurization step, which is what we did in this video, I would go ahead and take it up to boiling and boil that for 10 or 15 minutes, cool it down a little bit, and then add some hops to duplicate what I did to get the hop flavor and aroma. So there you go. With that kernel of wisdom, that pinch of salt, here's the episode. Welcome to Basic Brewing Video. I'm James Spencer.
I'm Steve Wilkes.
We have done kettle souring and wort souring and mash souring and things like that. The souring procedure before fermentation. We've done it several different ways, and we've done it with using grain, unmilled malt Turo as the source for the lactobacillus and such.
Yep.
We've done commercial lactobacillus. We've done probiotics. And now, I've recently gotten into kombucha, which is what this is. And I thought, this kombucha stuff, it's got this SCOBY, or the symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast, or mother, that you put in there to sour this sweet tea. I thought, why can't I use that to kettle sour a beer?
It's crazy.
And I looked online afterwards, after I did this, to see if anybody else had done it, and people had tried brewing a beer all the way through instead of using yeast, just putting the SCOBY in there and just letting it have its way with the beer all the way through, and it didn't come out well because they said it came out tasting like vinegar because there's acetobacter in there, and that makes vinegar. You don't want vinegar. No. What you want is a nicely tart beer. So the practice of kettle souring is that you put a lactobacillus or probiotic or whatever in there, and you sour it down to a certain level pH. Then you stop that,
right,
and then you add regular yeast and let the yeast do its job in making the beer. So that's what I did. So let me work through this process. Hang with me for just a minute.
Hang with me.
I started off with a couple of gallons or 7.5 liters of water, and I added 2 pounds or 907 grams of malted rye, and that's it. It's just a completely 100% malted rye beer. I mashed at 1 hour at 150 degrees Fahrenheit, and then I took the bag out, I took the grain out, and I raised the temperature to 180 degrees Fahrenheit or 82 C for 15 minutes because I wanted to pasteurize the wort. I wanted whatever was on that grain not to be in there anymore.
Right.
And then what I did was I added a half a gallon or around 1.9 liters of chilled water, and I used an ice bath to cool the wort down to 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 27 C. And so after that, I added a SCOBY. I added a kombucha mother to the wort, and then I covered it up and I set it aside and I let it do its work. Now I measured the pH of the wort before I added the SCOBY, and it was 6.0, which is pretty high, but 6.0. The day after, 24 hours later, the SCOBY had taken it down to 4.3. The day after that, it took it down to 4.0. On the third day, it went down to 3.2, which is a little past what I wanted to do. That's okay. So at that point, I took the kombucha mother out and I discarded it because I didn't want to use it in kombucha anymore. And I raised the temperature of that wort up to 180 degrees Fahrenheit again to pasteurize for 15 minutes. And at that point, I added 2 ounces of Cascade. Now, I didn't want to boil these hops because I didn't want the bitterness out of them. I just wanted the hop flavor and aroma. I then used another ice bath to drop the temperature down to yeast pitching temperature. I pitched a packet of US-05 into my little 2-gallon plastic fermenter, and then I fermented that for about 10 days. And at the end of that, after fermentation was complete, I racked it into a Mr. Beer fermenter, and I dry hopped for a couple days with an ounce of Chinook. But I gotta tell you, it was tasting pretty good before I added the dry hops. Anyway, so at the beginning, right after I pasteurized it the first time after I collected the wort, it was at 1.018 specific gravity, so 1018 specific gravity, pretty low. After I lowered the pH with the SCOBY, it had come down a couple of points to 1016. So I bet there's some yeast in there that was starting to work on the wort. At the end of the fermentation with the US-05, it was down to 1010. So here we have a beer that is 1% alcohol. So, did I cover it all?
I think so. I mean, it actually seems very straightforward.
After we've done this a couple times.
Well, yeah, we've done it a couple times, but yeah, it boggles the mind when you're used to boiling for an hour and 3 hop additions, and
it's completely different.
Completely different.
So you collect your wort, you raise it to pasteurization temperature for a few minutes to kill the bugs that are in there. You lower it back down. You inoculate it with whatever you're going to use as your, whether it's professional lactobacillus or whatever.
Right.
You let it sour to the point where you want to stop. You pasteurize it again. Then you cool it, add your beer yeast, and then it's just like a regular beer after that. So here's the jug, and this is basically what the SCOBY looked like that I put in there. If you watched our previous show, you saw that we just added fresh tea to that.
Is there any reason why you couldn't make a standard gravity beer doing this?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. This is just my little
because I'd go broke selling this stuff.
I know. I go to Steve's homebrew shop, stevesbrewshop.com. I go in and I say, hey, Steve, I want to make a batch of beer. I want to buy 2 pounds of rye.
I'm going to make a 1% beer. Okay.
Well, you did make a little money on the hops. No, you certainly do it with the standard gravity beer, and you don't have to use 100% rye. You can just make whatever
you make a normal work.
Whatever you do, you're going to do your kettle souring with. You can use this SCOBY. And the thing about it is it didn't smell funky. When I used the grain to inoculate. Yeah. It was like, ooh, yeah. Do I want to drink this? Smells like a little bit of dumpster, a little bit of diaper, This smelled really clean. So, do you want to give it a shot?
Yeah, you bet. I'm looking forward to this. It had a nice fizz.
Yeah, I carbonated it with one of those carb drops, those candies, and it's actually got a pretty good level of carbonation. Now, fans of the or skeptics of the cloudy beers, the hoppy cloudy beers, are not going to like the looks of this because it is darn cloudy, and I bet it would clear up if I would have boiled, because I've made rye beers, 100% rye beers that were clear,
sparkling clear.
Cheers.
Cheers. Oh, wow, it's good.
He said surprised.
Well, it's very light. It's lightly carbonated. It's not terribly sour, but it's sour.
Well, we have to say that we just came off a round of tasting kombucha that was like 2.8 pH. So so we're coming off of that. This is nicely, I think, delicately tart.
Mm-hmm, it is.
The hop character is nice. It is a low gravity beer, or low alcohol beer, but I don't miss the alcohol. But the mouthfeel, I think, is pretty substantial.
Yeah, it's kind of a Sinatra kind of a beer. Scoby Dooby Doo.
I thought you were going to say Scooby Dooby Doo. So there's likely never been a beer brewed like this.
No, I've never. This is very unique, and it actually is. It really is good. It really is good. It's so unique. I mean, I've never had. I say this often at James's house. I've never had anything like this before.
There's a little bit of what do I want to say? It's creamy. A little bit. The rye is a little bit creamy in there as well.
Yeah,
In that way, it's kind of like a Northeastern or a New England IPA.
It has that in common. So it has a fairly substantial mouthfeel, which you would expect from rye. Very light. I suspect, when you read about historic beers, historic brewing, historical, how you would, party gal brewing to the extreme where you'd pull the first rings and second rings, and they would go on out to 4 and 5 runnings. So the last beers they were making were 2% beers. I can kind of see where this is going, because if water were not potable, this would do it. But you could have this for breakfast, for lunch. Your kids could drink it.
Out in the field, you could have it.
Affect you in any way in terms of alcohol, but it's very refreshing and very light. Do you have any sense of what the calorie count is in it? I mean, in other words, if you were wanting to drink beer but be calorie count conscious.
I haven't figured this one out, but in the past we've done, my little kettle soured beers of similar gravity, and there was like less than 100 calories. So it's not much there as far as.
That's super good.
But light and refreshing and off the wall and
very different.
And the thing about kombucha is if you keep replenishing it, you've always got a SCOBY around. So it's real easy to make a couple gallons of a kettle soured beer, and you don't have to go out looking for the probiotics or whatever.
Wow. Well, good job.
Thank you, sir.
Good, really good experiment and good result.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I'd like to play with it some more. I'd like to do like a standard gravity, like barley beer. To like try to make a Berliner Weiss, a traditional, Berliner Weiss kind of recipe, and see if I can, achieve similar results with the SCOBY,
Yeah.
with the kombucha mother.
You brew the standard gravity beer with the mother, and then a smaller beer with the baby.
Time to go.
Time to go.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, James.
Cheers, everybody.
Come and visit us online. At basicbrewing.com, you can find archive lists of our audio and video podcasts on home brewing. You can also find our DVDs and our brewer's logbook, where you can track and log up to 50 batches of beer. If you're in Fayetteville, Arkansas, stop by Steve's Brew Shop or find him online at stevesbrewshop.com.
It's almost got a little, like a little milkshake kind of thing going.
Yeah, it's creamy.
Yeah.
This is the international symbol for creamy.